Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lonnie Diane Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lonnie Diane Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm story expert and little fella with no respect for the chain of command, Lonnie Diane Rich.
And I'm film scholar and truck-driving magic mama, Noelle LaCroix. And we're here today to talk about Two to Go, the 21st episode of Season 6. Two to Go aired on May 21st, 2002, and was written by Douglas Petrie and directed by Bill L. Norton.
Still Pretty is a fully spoiled, full-spectrum Buffy podcast, so if you haven't seen all of the show, go take care of that, and we'll check every hole in our sad little bodies for transmitters that don't exist.
Please, this is your pitch? You hate it here as much as I do. Let's go on patrol. In Two to Go, Buffy, Xander, and Anya run through the forest trying to save Jonathan and Andrew from Willow. Anya is able to teleport using her new demon powers, and Buffy can run really fast, but Xander's left behind with the car that Willow destroyed. At the jail, Andrew is desperately trying to believe that this is a test and that Warren is coming for them. Well, him, if he can just figure it out. Jonathan tries to convince him that his outrageous little conspiracy theory is in no way aligned with actual reality, and as gross as it is, I feel you, Jonathan. And then Anya pops into the cells, gives them the rundown, and flags a cop.
Something's coming. Something bad.
The cop doesn't move fast enough, and Willow arrives, pulling brick by brick out of the wall of their cell while everyone panics. Cops try to stop her, but she stops them and continues to tear a hole in the wall, brick by brick. Buffy arrives and finds a back way into the jailhouse, busting through an alley door. Willow's hole in the wall is big enough now, and she floats up to the cell, making her entrance, only to find the cell empty, with bars that have been pried apart.
Buffy.
Out on the street, Buffy is running with Jonathan and Andrew as Willow lets out a harrowing screech of fury and grief. That's not good. Xander shows up driving a stolen police car, and they all get in. Jonathan and Andrew panic as Buffy tries to decide where to go, but they've run out of time as they look behind them and see a Mack truck running up on them with a dark figure standing on the top of the truck, controlling it.
Jesus! What was that? Just Willow.
Xander hits the gas, but the truck is faster, even with the driver struggling to regain control. It hits the back of the car a few times, but then Willow falters and Jonathan reports that she's draining out. They manage to get away, their back fender making sparks on the ground as they race off. At Clem's, Dawn is anxious, and not even Clem's chip taste testing can distract her from her worry. She asks Clem to help her with something that requires a demon, and he gets worried. She says Spike would have helped her, and he reminds her, and us, that Spike is gone. Cue Spike in the Cave of Wonders as the demon tells him that in order to get what he wants, he must pass the test and fight a well-muscled dude who is easily twice his size.
We all know. Entertain us.
Out in the dark alley somewhere, Dawn is using Clem as a rack-finding system, and Clem is not sure about this, but he's doing it anyway, because Dawn. And because Clem. At the Magic Box, the remaining Avengers assemble and assess the situation. Bad news, all the magic books are gone. Good news, there's an anti-magic book. Bad news, it's in an ancient language Anya can't read. Jonathan offers to help since they're saving him and everything, and Buffy makes a distinction for him.
I just thought, as long as you're protecting us, the least I could do
I'm
is...
not protecting you, Jonathan. None of us are. We're doing this for Willow.
Buffy figures out that if Willow is running low on magic, she's going to Rax. And Buffy's right. Willow shows up and turns the tables on Rack, taking a little tour. Clem finds Rax and helps Dawn get in, and she leaves him in the waiting room while she goes in to find Rax dead and Willow all black-eyed and evil. She tries to talk to Willow, but Willow mocks her, making fun of Dawn for whining all the time. She offers to send Dawn back to being a mystical key, and just as she's about to do the one thing she can never come back from...
I think you need to get away from her.
At the magic box, Xander and Anya bicker while she tries to translate the anti-magic spells. She complains that she can't hurt him because it's against the rules, and he says that watching her have sex with Spike was all the vengeance she'll ever need.
That wasn't vengeance. It was solace.
At Rax, Willow turns her attention to Buffy, snarling as Buffy tries to talk her down from what she's trying to do. But Willow won't allow Buffy, who is happier dead than she is now, to try to sell Willow on how good the world is. Willow taunts Buffy, making fun of her, and while she talks, she teleports all three of them into the magic box. Buffy and Dawn struggle to recover from the teleport lag as Willow turns her attention to the two to go.
You boys like magic, don't you? Abracadabra.
Willow sends lightning bolts out of her fingertips, but they hit a shield in front of Andrew and Jonathan, causing no damage. Behind a bookcase, Anya frantically reads the anti-magic spell from the book. Willow is surprised at the effectiveness of the anti-magic and tries again. She pulls magic from the air.
Now I'm pretty sure I'm strong enough to beat you to death.
Andrew and Jonathan pull swords from the wall, but Buffy steps in and gets Willow's attention. She and Willow fight, and Xander grabs Dawn, Jonathan, and Andrew, leading them out the back door. He tries to get Anya to go with them, but...
I can't. I have to stay here to keep the spell going on, Willow.
No, but...
Go! Do something right!
In the alleyway, Andrew takes advantage of the confusion to put a sword to Xander's neck so he and Jonathan can go free. Jonathan then puts a sword to Andrew's neck, telling him no. When this is over, they're going to do their time and pay for what they've done. In the magic box, Willow discovers Anya reading from the anti-magic book and knocks her out. She turns her attention back to Buffy, saying that she understands the Slayer thing now. It's not about violence, it's about power. And nothing on Earth has the power to stop her now.
I'd like to test that theory.
All right, Noelle, so here we are at 2 to go, finishing up season 6, which has been an adventure.
Oh, yes.
How are you feeling about this episode?
All right. I have some thoughts on this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think powerfulest, magicist Willow is incredible, and punishing her for her power is homophobic. So if you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, No. I have complicated feelings about this episode. How about that?
I can absolutely understand your complicated feelings, and I will add to your complicated feelings because I do too. Overall, I've never really liked this episode, and I think because it feels like it's about Willow versus Jonathan and Andrew, and I just don't care enough about Jonathan and Andrew. But when I think of it as Willow wrestling with grief, and Anya finally being Anya, and Dawn being a fucking badass, and Clem being so sweet, I like it more. So it's there are individual parts of this that I actually really, really enjoy. But overall, this whole arc, this whole Dark Willow arc, has always been a little bit difficult for me. And I've never been able to really place my finger on exactly what it is that makes it difficult. Every time I watch it, I get a little bit closer for why it doesn't sit well with me. But you've got some ideas on this that I think are really interesting.
I don't know why it doesn't sit well with you. I know why it doesn't sit well with me.
Yes.
So we get a really interesting scene in this episode. I love the scene overall. I love what it tries to do. And I'm talking about the scene with Willow, Dawn, and Buffy at Rax.
Mm-hmm.
And in that scene, we bring back a bunch of stuff that's happened this season, including this idea of Willow as a junkie, as she says herself.
Yeah.
And also the idea that Willow's magical addiction, quote unquote, is that it is in response to her self-hate.
Mm-hmm.
That she has this little rap about junior high and high school and who she was and how awful that was. Mm-hmm. So we get Willow not liking Willow is kind of the textual understanding of why she develops this magical addiction. And we hear from Willow a couple times this season that magic is her escape from the person that she was in junior high and high school, who was picked on. And her self-hate is presented as the villain, I think, more than her magic is, even though that's what makes her scary.
Mm-hmm.
It's the self-hate. It's the, oh, if Willow could just love Willow.
Right.
But here's the thing about that self-hate for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that self-hate comes from other people telling Willow who she, quote unquote, really is.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked a little bit last week, or maybe a lot of it last week, about how Willow's darkness, her badness, is really sadness and grief. Well, Willow found something in magic and someone in Tara who made her feel good. So this grief is a queer femme grief that no one around her can really understand, because her friends, Buffy and Xander, are all about the before Willow, who Willow was before. Well, the Willow that they're talking about wasn't magical, and she also wasn't gay.
Mm-hmm.
Willow's magic cannot be separated from Willow's queerness. And I know I've tried to separate them before on this podcast, but I think I was wrong about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking that back.
Okay.
So when everyone comes at her with the magic is destroying you, as a lesbian, I think, who the hell are you to tell Willow who Willow is?
Mm-hmm.
So in this scene at Rax, Willow says, the only thing I had going for me were the moments when Tara would look at me and I was wonderful. And what she's talking about is being seen and loved as a queer person.
Mm-hmm.
Tara was the only one who really appreciated Willow's queerness, and also the only one who truly understood magic. Everyone is so busy trying to get Willow back that no one is thinking about Tara except for Dawn.
Right.
And I will get in a short while to Dawn and Dawn's relationship with Willow in this scene. But what I so desperately wish is that we had had a response to Willow saying that Tara will never look at her again that was more in line with, tell me about that.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about her. Because everyone needs
God.
that. Everyone who has lost someone they love needs that space. And queer people really super need it.
Okay. All of this is lighting up my brain like crazy. I love when you do that. Because one of the things that I think, it's helping me kind of isolate what it is that bothers me about this arc with Willow. And you're right. Like in the beginning, in season 4, right, magic was basically the metaphor for queer sex with Tara, right?
Yeah.
So that was our metaphor. And then suddenly magic became drugs. Right.
Yeah.
And it was so they've shifted back and forth. So I think that while you take it back, absolutely, I think that you have a right to do that. But I also don't think that you were necessarily wrong. I think that the text is telling you two things, right? And so you have to choose which one you're going to believe, right? Is the magic, this queer sex metaphor, this power of owning herself and allowing herself to be queer, or is it drugs? And I don't think that the text does both at once. I think that they shift it on you in the background when you're not looking, which makes it always feel somewhat off for me.
Well, they try to. I mean, they try to shift it, but I think that it's very difficult. I mean, in the context of a world, a cis heteropatriarchal world, I think that making that shift is not effective.
Yeah.
Whether they try to do it or not, I don't think you can do it effectively. I mean, certainly without it really, really feeling, deeply homophobic, right?
Yeah.
Like it was all, I pinged my girlfriend on this morning because I was like, I'm like really in my gay feelings right now, and I need you to, like check my gay self on this before I wreck my gay self. And she was like, no, like you're she co-signed.
Yes.
But there's also this, it feels homophobic. It feels really fucking homophobic. And something that my girlfriend said was, it's like, it's all well and good if you're just holding hands, we're like magically holding hands and there's like pretty twinkle lights around. But then when like somebody is actually going down on someone else, well, now we have to nip that in the bud. Like now it's like you've gone too far and you must be punished, and we have to reroute this magic as addiction and magic. There's magical abuse in the relationship too. And it's like,
no, there really is.
That feels, as much as I love seeing a complex relationship where trust is broken and then, regained, even if you do decide to skip to the kissing for a little while. I love seeing that, but the fact that all of that weight gets piled on a queer femme relationship fucking sucks. And it really feels homophobic to take what was this like beautiful, affirming love story and twist it into, it's drugs, it'll destroy you, you're not who you really are.
Right. You don't know yourself. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm interested in one of the things that what you're saying is making me think of is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie did a TED Talk called it was about the like the power of the one story, or the trouble with the one story, right? That if you have, because as a heterosexual, I get loads of stories in a wide range about heterosexual, love and sex and everything. And they don't have to kill me off because I'm straight all the time, right? They don't have to jail me because they don't have to punish me for being straight. I don't get punished for being straight because I have a million different stories about straight people, and they have a wide range, but it is because they're straight, that if something bad happens to a straight person, it's not the only story that I have. And it's not because they're straight.
It's not because they're straight.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's tricky because there is a long history in film and television of turning queer characters into villains, or vice versa, right? Turning villains into queer characters. Like, I'm so not the first person or even the best person, not by far, to speak on this. But the queer coding of villains is a long history, certainly in American film and television. So it does not feel like a coincidence that we end this episode with two extraordinarily powerful young women. Extraordinarily powerful, supernaturally powerful. And one of them is allowed to be powerful and one of them is not. And the one who is not is queer. And that queerness has been spun into darkness and harm. It's very, very difficult to separate these things out. I think.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, it just feels like a big mess. And I think that, like, now that you're talking about that shifting metaphor, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of something that I think has is what I like for when I know what something is, to have it be that thing.
Yeah.
When you shift to the nature of the reality on it. That has always thrown me off with the Willow storyline, but especially with this, this idea that it's not just a shifting metaphor, but it's also shifting what was kind of, the magic is queer sex was kind of beautiful in the beginning, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think
that
that's
was really
a
nice and
fantastic
affirming
decision. I think that magic as queer sex and particularly these two as being authentically magical together. Like, that was what brought Willow and Tara together, right? Was that Willow was really magic, whatever that means, and Tara was really magic, whatever that means. So they were together because they had this thing in common, but they also had this understanding and this ability to exist together in a way that the people around them didn't understand. And taking, I like the thought behind taking Tara's death and using that to take Willow to a really, really dark and difficult place. But I like that in isolation more than I like it in execution. I think it's a compelling story. But if we were not always killing off queer characters or using like dead women to motivate people to like it's exhausting. Yes. For one, it's such an unfortunate turn for this couple in so many ways. And then they don't resolve it the way that, I'm like, all right. I'll give you all of this. If you had to do what you had to do, sure, whatever. Then they have this fantastic opportunity with Dawn that they don't take. And I'm just, no, like I'm just out at that point. I just can't do it. I can't do it.
Let's go ahead and skip ahead. Let's talk about that.
You want me to talk about
absolutely.
Dawn?
Okay. I think it's all related. Yeah. It's part of that same conversation.
It is. It is part of this conversation because I so desperately want that confrontation at Rax between Dawn and Willow to have gone differently. Because Dawn's whole thing all season long has been, I'm here, I love you, I want to help, right? With everybody. She wants to be part of the group. She wants to be with her people. She truly believes she's strong enough to help. And I want her to be right about that. I'm totally fine with the idea that, with Willow being as powerful as she is, that maybe Dawn is in over her head. Like, I don't need Dawn to take on, magical Willow and win. But I would love to have seen her do more than cower, especially because this darkness, quote unquote, in Willow is about grief. And Dawn loved Tara. She says, I miss Tara too. And we see the potential for the Willow-Dawn relationship to really be something more in this scene. Dawn was the biggest cheerleader for the Tara and Willow relationship from beginning to end. I'll go watch TV in the basement really loud. Dawn is more delighted by, she loves Willow and she loves Tara, but she is more delighted by them as a couple. She loves them together more than anybody else.
They're her parents. And, let's not forget, Dawn sat with Tara.
Yeah.
For an entire afternoon so that Tara wouldn't be alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dawn, other than Willow and Tara for each other, Dawn really seems like the only one who sees the beauty of this queer relationship to me.
Yes.
And it feels right that Dawn would be the one to confront Willow with the real driving force of her anger. It would, if somebody is going to bring to Willow this idea that, what you're feeling is grief and sorrow and heartbreak, and it is devastating, that should be Dawn. Yeah. It should be Dawn. And I would love to see Willow threaten to turn Dawn back into a ball of energy and have Dawn not back down. If Dawn had said, I love Tara and I love you and you can turn me back into a ball of energy if you want to, but I'm not leaving you. Like if Dawn had stayed with Willow or
the way she stayed with Tara.
Exactly. If she had indicated to Willow, I'm not, like you're going to hurt me. Like I can't stop you from hurting me if that's what you decide you're going to do, but I can decide to stay here with you. That would have been so much more compelling.
Yeah.
Especially since the last time Willow and Dawn were at Rax, it ended with Willow almost killing Dawn in a magical drunk driving car wreck.
After which Dawn slapped Willow across the face.
Yep.
Like Dawn is not, she's no shrinking violet. Yeah. She went to Rax to find Willow.
On purpose.
What did she think was going to happen? So then the second she finds Willow, she kind of shrinks back down. And I think that we make Dawn weak so that Buffy can appear stronger when she comes in to rescue.
I think so too. And as much as I don't like the magical addiction storyline, a nice side effect of a confrontation between Dawn and Willow in this moment would have been that it would work into a narrative about addiction and recovery. Mm-hmm. We would have needed a little bit more in the space of everyone kind of rumbling with, okay, can we trust Willow? Like earlier in the season as she's, moving through her recovery, can we trust Willow? And Willow rumbling with like, can I trust myself? Mm-hmm. If we really want to do like an addiction and recovery kind of story. But in the end, we would have come around to a narrative that says a person can do something scary and dangerous, can put somebody else, can put somebody that they love in harm's way and still be loved and forgiven. Mm-hmm. And that way, when scary, dangerous Willow shows up a second time, it gives us a firmer foundation to stand on in terms of prioritizing our relationship with this person over everything else.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I think that's the story that they're trying to tell, right? Our friend Willow is more important than any harm she's caused, which is a great message, especially for folks who struggle with mental health or maladaptive coping mechanisms. Like, we need those stories too. But I want it to be much more layered. So, when Willow comes after Dawn with like, did you cry? Yeah. And making fun of Dawn for crying. Like, it's so rough, but it also... it speaks to where she is in grief, but then Dawn just backs down. And I would have liked for it to have been just a stronger narrative and just a stronger moment for Dawn, because all of the signs point to Dawn can do this. Dawn is capable of doing this, and she wants to be there for her people. So to have her back down when Willow mocks her is just, I don't know. It's not good payoff for everything. I don't like it.
No, well, she's being damseled, right?
Yeah.
We're using Dawn as a damsel for Buffy to come after Willow,
Yeah.
instead of attending to all of these things that you mentioned, which would have made this so much more of an interesting narrative, talking about the things that we want. We go to these dark places with characters so that we can walk them through those dark places, right? Mm-hmm. And right now we're playing the big bad at the end of the season is going to destroy the world thing so that we can center on Buffy. But we also don't center Buffy because Buffy's depressed and we don't know how to deal with her being depressed. So we're just making her a flat cardboard cop, character in this, which is kind of the problem that I have with Buffy in this episode. But before we move on to that, I kind of had, some questions that I was thinking while you were talking, because you were talking about like the litter of queer and female and Black and brown bodies that we see in our storytelling in general, and which we're seeing again here. I can't say that Tara was fridged, because generally what a fridging is a character that is just, her only characteristic is woman, and then we kill her so that we can motivate a male story, which is not exactly what we did with Tara. We did kill our gays with Tara. We are punishing Willow in this way, sort of not necessarily punishing her for being queer, but somehow associating that queerness is the source of what's destroying her, right? Even though it was queer love that destroys her, instead of looking at it as, I think that, and correct me on this because I'm just thinking about this now, but like there's normalizing, narratives that have queer people in them, and that we've got queer people they just happen to be that, and we're not putting that weight on everything that they are. That identity isn't everything that character is in those stories. And here we have so much of that ever since, Willow came out, like that. The fact that she's queer has always been kind of like this top-notch identity, for all the things that Willow is. And so when we have this danger of the single story, right, that we don't have enough stories, so that when we have this story with, headlining a queer person, we end up in this space where we're doing these terrible things to them. And, it would be nice to just see a queer person, like, be allowed to live and be happy sometimes. Although characters being allowed to live and be happy is always a challenge in fiction in general, because we want to walk through these things with them. But I feel like we're walking through this about Willow rather than with Willow. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and we get some of that textually, too. Like, we hear a lot about what will happen to Willow if things continue the way that they're going. I mean, we open the episode with Buffy and Xander being so sure that, like, she's killed, and now that she's killed, she's gonna kill again, because that's how killing works, and you don't come back. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Like, what happened with, like, it's a little bit of, like, ideological whiplash for me in that way. There's so much projected onto Willow and, like, what this means in terms of everyone else. Everyone else is telling Willow what this means and who she is. I mean, last time, I don't remember if it's Buffy or Xander who says, you're using magic. If you keep going, you're not, you can't come back from this. And Willow flat out says, I'm not coming back, which I kind of love. Like,
well, I do. When she's going to kill Dawn, that's the line, right? Yeah. I mean, she killed Warren. She can go ahead and kill Jonathan and Andrew. The idea that I'm protecting you because it's going to destroy Willow is like, Willow's already killed Warren. Jonathan and Andrew don't matter, but Dawn does. Like, killing Dawn. And when she's threatening to kill Dawn, I think that is Willow saying, I don't want to come back.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because she's not threatening to kill Dawn per se. She's going to turn her back to what she was before, right? Which is the threat that Willow feels from everyone coming after her, about, like, well, the magic's going to destroy you. You have to stop using magic. You have to go back to what you were before.
Right.
So there's that, there's that hurt people idea of, Willow feels this pressure from everyone to go back to what you were before, which I've already talked about in terms of, like, queerness, like, go back to being a sidekick, go back to being less powerful, go back to being not so openly gay, please. But there's also, I mean, back to where you were before feels adjacent to they're dead, get over it. Like, you need to get over the grief, as though you could get over the death of someone you love. I don't know, that I'm reading a lot into this, but there's that threat against Dawn feels hollow to me. I think it's Jonathan's observation when they're all in the car together, and he says something like, or maybe it's Andrew who says, she knows you're in here too. Like, Jonathan and Andrew have this idea that Willow is coming after them, but like won't come after her friends. And of course, we the audience understand that, the rules have changed. Willow absolutely will hurt anybody who stands in her way at this point. Interesting and problematic turn there as well. But I don't know. I'm fascinated that the threat against Dawn is you're not real, essentially. She uses that same vulnerability that Dawn was grappling with against Dawn and says, I'm gonna turn you back. You don't remember who you were before. I'm gonna turn you back. I don't know. Yeah. There's a real deep dive queer read of this whole thing that
I love it. Yeah, I think that's great. I also find it really interesting that, listening to your rewrite of this interaction, the way that it could have gone, the way that probably it should have gone, had Dawn been reaching Willow with, tell me about Tara, let me talk about Tara, this is what I love about Tara, remember the pancakes, the funny shaped pancakes she would make and all this kind of stuff, humanizing Tara and using Tara's humanity to access Willow's humanity to bring it back. And then if Willow had responded with that threat then you would see that was the source of everything, that was what this is about, more than we're just so glad to be able to put Allison Hannigan in leather and make her, beat the shit out of people, which is also fun.
Which is great.
I'm not going to lie.
She looks
phenomenal.
To see
Allison Hannigan. She
looks phenomenal as like all hopped up on magic. When we get that reveal of her, when she has drained Rack and hung him upside down from his ceiling, and we whip around and she's all, not only does she have the full eye contacts, but she's got like the black face veins. And she looks both like sort of vampire-ish, but also dead. It's great. I love it.
God.
I love to
so
see it.
Good.
It's a great
And that's
effect.
wonderful. It's wonderful to see that. So there are things like, I understand the reasons why some of these choices were being made, but I kind of wish that the Dawn scene had gone the way that you have kind of reimagined it. I think that would be so great. But one of the things also that's really interesting is that while she's threatening Dawn, when Anya is actively thwarting her, and as a woman who does not like to be thwarted, I know how that can feel. She just knocks her out. She just stops her from doing the thing and then goes back to focus on Buffy instead of killing Anya. Now, I realize that, of course, Anya, this is extra textual, is protected by almost as much Delight armor as Spike has.
Yeah.
But at the same time, why doesn't she just kill Anya? But she doesn't make that choice there.
I don't know exactly why she doesn't kill Anya, but I love it when Anya looks at her. It's revealed, Willow is knocked back, sees Anya reading the counter spell, and Anya just keeps reading and is just making eye contact with Willow. Like, I'm not gonna fucking stop reading this spell. It's so good. It's so good. And it's almost, I don't know. There's something there. I want more between Willow and Anya. I think we talked about this last time too, that there's so much potential there for a kind of understanding that and a I don't know, of characters who are going to see each other and like appreciate each other's strengths. I think there's potential for Willow and Anya, and we don't get that.
I love Willow and Anya. I mean, I love them all the way through. I love them from Doppelgangland when Willow comes in and helps Anya with her spell. We're going to see that again in Same Time, Same Place, where Anya helps Willow with her spell.
Yeah.
And there's some great, it did get kind of sexy, didn't it? Okay, now that's from Same Time, Same Place. If you want to hear me talk about that now, you go to Slayerfest 98, because I just talked about that episode with them a couple of weeks ago. But
I believe
God,
these chicken feet are mine.
Oh my God, I love it all so much. I love Anya and Willow. They've got that, we've had them at odds. We had them in Triangle, where they resolved kind of this conflict that they had, and sort of came to endure each other, civilly, finally. But to have them both, now that Xander's out of the picture, and Anya is so much better without Xander, it is unbelievable how much better she gets as soon as she loses that dead weight. But this relationship, I am so much more interested and invested in the relationship between Willow and Anya than I am between or ever was with Anya and Xander. Like Willow and Anya are the heart of that relationship for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, there's so much potential for the two of them to see each other in a really interesting way.
As powerful women and powerful women who've done some dark shit.
Yeah.
We have this idea that Willow is going to, she kills Jonathan and Andrew, she'll be destroyed. She'll never come back. Do you know how many people Anya has killed? How many people has Angel killed? Like, there's always a way back. It's going to be a fight, but there's always a way back. Faith.
Yeah.
There's always a way back for people who are sorry and acknowledge what they've done and try to make good and come back. You can come back from it, and so it's interesting because we see this with Jonathan and Andrew. Yeah. The least interesting part of this, I've always liked Jonathan and Andrew. I've always found them fun. I find Tom Link and Danny Strong charming. And I'm not going to lie. I suspect that a great deal of my affection for Jonathan and Andrew comes down to the actors playing these characters much more than the characters themselves. Mm-hmm. Jonathan has basically worked my last fucking nerve since Superstar, and his weakness of character that allows him, after the events of Superstar, to have learned fucking nothing, and then finally only learn it when it costs the life of a woman, right? It's just, it's really irritating. But I love Danny Strong. I think that he's wonderful. I love Tom Lenk. I think that he's wonderful. His performance does a lot for me. But we have this, thing where, Tom Lenk is trying to figure out a way that he can believe that Warren still loves them. I mean him, Mm-hmm. And then in the end, when they're escaping and Andrew holds the sword to Xander's neck, and then Jonathan comes back at Andrew and says, no, we are going to pay for what we've done. Mm-hmm. There's a moment there where I'm like, all right, Jonathan, this is where you begin. Yeah. This is where it starts. And I find that more interesting than all of the nerd jokes and nerd shit, I like that moment for Jonathan, but I'm so tired of both of them at this point, and excessively tired, more tired in this watch than I have ever been. Because my patience for this kind of character and the real people upon which they're based has seriously fucking waned in recent years. And when I say the people upon which they're based, like, I'm not talking about nerds. Xander's, you've never even had just a little bit of sex, is so misplaced because nerds get lots of sex. Xander's a nerd. He had Anya. I mean, for God's sake, what's wrong with Jonathan and Andrew is not their nerdery. It's their excess of white privilege and male privilege, which curdles into white entitlement and male entitlement, which are two different things, and which, when mixed together, become deadly fucking dangerous. And both of which are just not funny to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I like in this episode that they are finally waking up a little bit to what's really going on. Yes. I do love Andrew's little rap about, you really think that Willow's gonna stop? It's wonderful. Like, it's very, very written and it's very silly, but his observation is correct that, like, no, like, I don't think you understand quite the level of power that this woman has. And then that moment at the end from Jonathan is great. Yeah. Like, no, we are going to do our time when this is over. Yeah. You prick.
And finally, Jonathan is doing what I would hope he would have done after the events of Superstar.
Yeah. I mean, people figure shit out when they figure it out, right? Yeah. Like, it, but
it's forgivable. I mean, this is the thing. Like, he can redeem himself. It's a lot of work, but you can do it. So the idea that Willow is going to destroy herself. Yeah. If Willow's going to destroy herself from killing Andrew and Jonathan, then she's already destroyed herself by killing Warren. And it's a little bit of a moot point at this point, Yeah. So all of that, and I just feel like, if you don't mind, I would really like to just get the stench of Jonathan and Andrew out of the air by relighting the Anya scented candle for just a minute.
The Anya scented candle.
The Anya scented
Oh,
candle.
right. What does it smell like, though? Slug?
Oh, smells.
It smells like slug. You know it does. She loves those things.
It might smell like slug. But I love her. I love her power. I love her competence. I love her knowledge. I love her courage. I love when she dead eyes Willow and says, all right, I'm going to keep reading this until you kill me, but you're going to have to kill me to stop me. I love her rushing to Jonathan and Andrew to try to save them, talk to the police. She's teleporting all over the place. She's like, what's coming is real and it's scary and it's dangerous and we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
I love the way that she talks to Xander when they have their little conversation. That wasn't vengeance. It was solace.
Yes. Best line. Best line.
Oh my God. It's so great. I love her. This is the Anya. You know, Anya, she's been a comedy mule for so long while she was attached to Xander. But here she is now, and she is competent and complete and fully realized and badass. And I love her so much. She quickly becomes one of my favorite characters on the whole show ever. As soon as she dumps Xander.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that she pulls the key to the okay, so we've got a box, right, with a magic book in it, or a counter magic book with it that is in a locked box. I love that the key is in the cash register. Anya is saving us with the cash register once again.
Of course she is.
Being very much herself, even, you know, even though we've moved away from Anya likes money.
Yes.
Like she still is herself. And while you were raving about Anya, something occurred to me. Part of the connection between Anya and Willow, I wonder if part of it might be this. You know, Anya has killed who knows how many people. When she says, she comes to the jail and she just breaks it down for Andrew and Jonathan, and she says of Willow, you know, she's telling them what Willow did to Warren. And she says, she killed him, ripped him apart, and bloodied up the forest doing it. Except that she didn't do that. Willow didn't do that. She cleaned up after herself. She
did.
She incinerated him and sent him straight to hell where he belongs, you know, before vanishing without a trace. But I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Is Anya projecting a little bit? Is she seeing a little bit of herself in Willow? And that's why that's part of the connection with Willow. It's not just me drawing the connection between them. It's Anya sees a connection. I don't know. But
why is Anya still there? Why is Anya helping them? I mean, I know she loves the magic box, but she's a vengeance demon. Now she's got a job. She's clearly got a lot of traveling to do. She's got vengeance to perform. She has her demon life back. Why is she I mean, I know she's still here, light armor, but like, why is she as a character motivated to still be here fighting this fight with these people?
Right. It's a great question. And I'm not sure we ever get a real answer to it, do we?
I think we do in season 7. I think we do in season 7.
Don't remember. Season 7 is a blur for me, so that's going to be fun.
Yeah, no, that is going to be really, really fun. There's a fabulous episode called Selfless where we explore Anya quite a bit more, and I think we get the answer to that question then, but we don't have it now. But as long as we're talking about characters, the one character that in the end is always kind of the afterthought, for me at least, while doing the script, is, what's going on with Buffy?
What is going on with Buffy in this episode?
Why don't you talk to me a little bit about Buffy and her really bad listening skills?
Buffy with the no listening skills.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm going to come back to this scene at Rax again because that is just, I mean, that's my scene.
Yeah, it's an anchor scene in this episode, definitely.
Buffy, over and over again. I mean, Buffy tells Willow that she, meaning Willow, doesn't want this, that she'll lose herself. We talked about that.
Yeah.
But Willow has been very clear that that's the point. Like, Willow knows what she's doing. But Buffy seems to want, I mean, I talked about this a little bit already, that Buffy seems to want Willow back. But Willow doesn't want that Willow back.
Right.
So who gets to say who you are authentically except you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Buffy is talking to Willow in that scene like as though Willow is unclear about where all of this is headed. But Willow has spoken very clearly to Buffy about what has happened, that, you know, the point almost is to lose herself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So because she's lost Tara, which in a way, you know, was the acknowledgement of herself that she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So Buffy is telling Willow what she wants and where her place in the world is. And it just drives me crazy because I understand. I mean, I understand that Buffy's strength isn't listening and heart and holding space. Buffy's strength is strength.
Yes.
But Buffy's words carry this extra weight, and I bounce so hard off of her telling Willow, who is ostensibly her best friend, who Willow really is.
Right.
I don't like Buffy in this episode. I really don't.
I think it's really interesting because as you're talking, I'm like, oh my God, how much better would this be? Right. Okay. We've had this whole season of Buffy's depressed, and we are separated from Buffy because Buffy's not feeling anything. So we're not connecting with her because that's how we connect with characters, is by feeling what they feel, you know, empathizing with them, seeing through their vulnerability. And she is very much running away from her vulnerability. We're not really seeing it. She's very shut down. She's very mechanical. She's Buffy cop, right?
Yeah.
But here's this moment though, like, and again, like, your rewriting of the Dawn scene, I think, is so beautiful and would have been so interesting and so crunchy. But as you're saying this, I'm like, yeah, but Buffy's about protection, right? She's not about ostensibly. Oh, I mean, like, you know, textually through the text, right? As soon as somebody can't hurt anybody anymore, like Angelus, you know, she killed Angelus because Angelus had to go to hell in order to, you know, stop Acathla from sucking the world into hell at the end of season 2. But if he had just come back, if Angel had just come back, even though he'd done all these horrible things as Angelus, she would put her sword down, right? Spike gets chipped. She puts her stake down, you know, with Spike, right? Again, delay armor, but textually within the story, you know, it's because Spike can't hurt humans anymore. Her job is to protect humans from demons, right? So now we have Willow has killed Warren, right? And that's done. She can't, you know, protect Warren from Willow anymore. But here are two humans and she has to protect them. So if Buffy had...
Except that she flat out says to Jonathan, I'm not protecting you.
Yes.
She says, I'm not protecting you. And I'm like, wait a second. So
exactly.
So Buffy is about protection, but also there's some like hierarchy of who is deserving of protection.
Right. That's where it goes wrong. This is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
This is what I'm saying. I'm saying.
I skipped to the end. Sorry.
No. I was saying it wrong because I'm saying about what Buffy has been about prior to this, right? And that's how we fuck that up in this episode.
Gotcha.
Because where she should be is, I have a sacred responsibility to protect humans, even weaselly pieces of garbage like the two of you. And I am now going to have to go up against my best friend and one of the people I love most in the world to protect you two. So shut the fuck up, right? That she has a job to do. And now Willow is forcing her to do that job against Willow. And if Buffy had gone into that scene saying, please don't make me do this. Please don't make me do this. Please don't make me stop you. I have to stop you. I don't have a choice. I love you. I understand your pain. All of this stuff. If she had connected with Willow instead of going into, and again, like the episode that I'm talking about in season 7, where she goes into Buffy cop mode, she does that with Anya too, you know?
Yeah.
And I would have loved to have seen her wrestling with that internal conflict between her love for Willow, her agreement that Warren and Jonathan and Andrew are terrible and fuck them, right? You know, because Warren and Jonathan and Andrew also took Tara from Buffy, from all of them. And there's grief to be involved there. To see Buffy at this point, especially after a season of walking through that depression with her, that it is her love for Willow that brings her out of that, where she connects with her emotions in this moment with Willow. Finally, instead of just being tough, quippy, I'm going to kick your ass, bitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't make me do this. Please don't make me do this. It's killing me to do this with you. If we had gone to that space with Buffy, I think that I would have been more interested in Buffy in this episode.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of payoff for Willow's whole taunting of Buffy about, you didn't want to come back. Like Willow telling on herself, really, about like, I brought you back and you're miserable.
Yeah.
You don't want to be here. There's that just drops. We don't address that at all.
But that's kind of an interesting discussion to be had, though, because that's what Buffy has been about this whole season is I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And if she's like, I want to be here now, I want to be here with you.
Yeah. I want to be here now and I want you here with me. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I need you here with me. I can't do this without you. The relationship between Buffy and Willow isn't about, I want old Willow back. It's like, I want to come back to be here with you.
Yeah.
I mean, that could have been, I want me back.
Yeah.
Right? I can't be me without you, Willow. Like, that would have been a wonderful thing, to like really work these relationships. And instead, we kind of go to tropey damsel hero stuff.
Yeah. Well, and to then explore that complexity, right? Of Willow thinks Buffy is saying, I want you to go back to being not powerful and not in the spotlight and not magical and not in love. Like Willow thinks that because she is hurting and she's going to hear everything through the lens of hurting. And Buffy is saying, I want to go back to feeling connection with you.
Yeah.
Again, we need so much opportunity for connection that we miss.
How much better would that have been? I mean, the thing with this episode is that it is an act 2, right? We have it's a 3-part story between villains, Two to Go and Grave, which we'll get to next week. And this is the middle act, the second act sag. You always have that, and the thing is because, the first act starts all the action, right? So that's exciting. And the third act resolves everything. So you get that satisfaction from it. And the second act just kind of keeps it going and keeps it escalating. And that can sometimes be a little saggy. But when you build in not just escalating danger from Willow being so badass and so angry, but also like escalating emotional stakes and really clearly laying those emotional conflicts, what happens when you have to go up against somebody who you love and how much Buffy loves Willow. I think is something that needs to be expressed here, which we're not expressing. We're saying I'm protecting her from herself, which is a really patronizing way of looking at what Willow's going through, you know, as opposed to I have to do this because I have to do this. And you assholes are the reason why I have to go up against my best friend. Shut up. That would have been really nice.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great way to escalate, right? Because each season we're building. Each big bad sort of builds until season 5 when we go up against a literal god.
Yeah.
It's like, well, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
We take on something that is even more potent and powerful, and that is our relationships with our best friends. Relationship season. Good
it's
Lord.
Relationship season, yes.
But I don't feel it. I don't feel the I miss my best friend vibe so much as I feel the I am mad at you for using your addictive substance again. Like it's the, I think it's Mitch Hedberg who says that alcoholism is the only disease that you can get yelled at for having. Right. It's like we ostensibly love Willow so much that we can't let her use the magics, but it's really like, I'm so mad that I have to go like deal with my best friend who's so dangerous. It's Buffy's kind of pouty about the whole thing.
Buffy's not wonderfully written this season.
It's such a bummer. It did not have to be this way.
She's essentially, being the conflict vending machine at this point, and it's such a disappointment because there's so much more that could have been so interesting. Writing a depressed character is difficult, but if they had done it, and then had Willow needing Buffy be what brings Buffy back, that her love for Willow is what finally reconnects her with herself. That could have been really interesting because this season just doesn't have a center. Buffy's usually the center, but she's not now. And so it's definitely challenging, but I think there's things that they could have done, which would have been really, really nice. But given the episode that we got, which had none of those things, what's your favorite part?
This all would have been nice. And since we got none of it, what do you like about what we actually got? No, I love it.
There's got to be a bright side somewhere.
No, I mean, for all of the subtextual homophobia, I like Willow telling us the truth about herself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I am obviously irritated with how that plays out, but I love Willow's clarity on who she is. And oh God, when she switches from talking about herself in the third person, the only thing Willow was ever good for. And then she pauses and she says, the only thing I had going for me were the moments, just moments, when Tara would look at me and I was wonderful. And that will never happen again. It breaks my heart. It's so beautiful. Yeah. It's so real. It's a heartbreaking favorite part, but it's my favorite part.
Yeah, no, definitely. That is really, really good.
I think I know your favorite part based on what I know about you and what you love about this show. But what is your favorite part?
Slug smelling candle. Yeah. Give me that. Give me that Anya. Give me that Anya finding her power, finding her purpose, no longer subsuming everything she is and everything she wants down to this 1950s ideal of becoming Mrs. Xander Harris. I love it. I love that they turn her around so fast and she's no longer a comedy mule. And it's badass, and I love, love, love this Anya, and I'm so glad we got her.
If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, connect with the show on Twitter. Follow @Chipperish and use the hashtag StillPretty.
This episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now, so thank you to our March producers. Stephania, Shelley, Rose, Jonathan, Alice, Kristen, Sarah, Christina, Erica, and Abigail. And this week's special message for our power producers: these things are real, they're dangerous, and they're coming.
To find out how you too can support Chipperish Media, visit patreon.com/Chipperish. Other ways to show your support: write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or run and hide. That's our brilliant plan.
We'll be back next time with Grave, the 22nd episode of Season 6. Until then, you boys like magic, don't you? Abracadabra.